Today we have Damo Campbell from the Casanovas with us. They have released, but they're doing a late album launch of Reptilian Overlord. And I've got Damo here to tell us a little bit about the show and also about the tracks that are on the album. So I haven't interviewed you before, and you joined the Casanovas after moving to Melbourne from Tasmania.
Yeah, way back.
Yeah.
I was in a band called Mustang back then. So and you know, Mustangs, I don't think they're doing much anymore, but that was sort of around late 90s, sort of 96, 97 or something like that. So we all moved over from Tassie together, and then I met the boys, Tommy and Paddy and Jim from the Casanovas, and yeah, got a spot playing bass, which was great.
And who were you listening to when you were growing up in Tassie?
Probably a lot of rock bands, a lot of classic rock, Sabbath, Zeppelin, that sort of stuff. Probably, a little bit of punk rock as well. I was big into the Sex Pistols, into the Ramones, that sort of thing. But we had, it was a small town where I'm from Launceston, so we had a pretty good rock pub called the Trades that was the go-to, and we were lucky enough back then that all the sort of Melbourne rock bands like Bored and the Powder Monkeys and those guys would come down and actually play in Launceston, which was unreal. So we were pretty privileged, and everyone would go, so. And then there were Tassie bands like, you had Fridge and Dreadnought and, bands like that were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was sort of like every band that was half decent that got a good following in Tassie or Launceston always then made the move to the mainland, Yeah, and I guess we followed in that tradition in the early late 90s. We did the same. We were playing sort of mostly Launceston, bit of Hobart, and then we'd come over and do some shows in Melbourne, and then one day we just like, right, let's move over.
Yeah, and we adopted you. We didn't care. We adopted you in Melbourne.
Yeah, I remember the first time coming to Melbourne and sort of walking into the tote, and it was just like, wow, this is the Holy Land. It was sort of everything that we had in Tassie, but just that much bigger. But yeah, it was pretty cool, and that's all changed now in Tassie. There's not much of that now at all. A lot of those venues have gone, and yeah, it's a lot quieter than what it was.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but things change. Music interests and trends and all that sort of change, I guess. But yeah, it was really sort of a good vibe and group of sort of rockers and metalheads and all that sort of thing in Tassie.
Yeah, well, definitely your sound, even with the Casanovas, it does have that rock vibe, but it also, you can tell the influences from heavier, but also more melodic. Like that, it's got that eclectic sound, and it really has become like a Casanovas sound now.
Yeah, well, we sort of, when I joined the band, it was pretty, the Casanovas had the AC/DC, I guess, sound, and that's sort of what a lot of people for a long time attributed to the Casanovas. And then it was sort of a little bit, I guess when a band like The Darkness came out, it was like, oh, that's sort of just like what the Casanovas were doing, just that little bit of rock shtick and, all of that kind of little bit glammy maybe, but never meant to be sort of that on purpose, really, that AC/DC sort of thing. We love AC/DC, but I think between, Tommy and I, we've got so many sort of rock influences, a lot of classic rock, as I said before, Sabbath and, a little bit of punk rock and everything. And we had George Stanley in the band for a while, and he was, probably a lot more on the punk influence, but it's probably just now we've got the freedom, we can write songs that have all those interests and, all the things that we like in a rock song just come out. We're sort of not bound by any rules, and that's where you get some really sort of melodic sort of stuff, some real classic stuff, some ZZ Top sounding sort of songs, I guess, and some Sabbathy sort of stuff. And it's probably, this album's the best, well, probably the most honest collection of all those sounds that we like on that album.
Well, you mentioned Jaws, and then he left and you had someone in to fill in to do the album, and now you've got Brett Wolfe with you.
Oh, well, Jaws was in our band for, God, I think 15 years or so. He moved overseas, and we were sort of working on Reptilian Overlord at the time, and then we had we were sort of drummerless to go into the studio. So our good friend Ricky Ray, who's a phenomenal drummer, learnt the songs in 2 days, and then he just came into the studio and was unbelievable. Just knocked him over, and sort of still had that real raw energy of, it's the first time he's played these songs. So that was really cool that we got that. And then, Brett Wolfe, we've got him in the band full time now. He's takes the band to another level. It's just really different type of drummer than what Jaws was and Ricky was. So we're actually looking forward to jumping in the studio and recording another album, and the first one with Brett.
Fantastic. I can't wait. When do you see that happening?
We're going to go into the studio actually in April. So
Fantastic.
so not far away. So I think in the past we've had some pretty big sort of gaps where we haven't done much, and sort of 3 years and 5 year gaps between albums. So I think this time when we got Reptilian out, it was like, well, let's try and get another one sort of, at least a year and a half or 2 years after that.
Yeah, that's great. One of my favorite songs, Stand Back. Now that drumming, that start of that song is amazing. Did Jaws come up with that? Did Ricky, or did you guys? Did you and Tommy?
We came up with that. I mean, I actually wrote that one on what's the Apple program? Real basic sort of drums, GarageBand.
Oh, okay.
So and it was, at the time, it was like really limited to what you could actually come up with drums. So it was just sort of this real basic beat to do the start, and it just sort of stuck. And then Ricky just emulated that and just, obviously played it a lot better. That's how that got. And I think it was, when that was written, it was sort of like, well, we don't really have like a sort of, swing beat type of song either. So no, that's cool. Yeah. But it was just an accident, really, how it sort of came about.
So we start, side one. I'm going to go with the album. Side one is Hollywood Ride. How did that come about?
I was just mucking around with that riff, just the sort of the main. I was trying. What I was trying to do? I was actually listening to a lot of Dead Moon at the time. And I was really trying. I love that real sort of raw kind of rock and roll sound they've got. And I think I was trying to channel that when I was sort of just playing around with my guitar acoustically, and sort of came up with that sort of real sort of simple thing. That was pretty much it. And then it was sort of like, where does this song go from now? And it was sort of like, there's I won't say which one, but there's a Def Leppard song that has this beautiful change from the key into the chorus. And I was like, actually, that it's completely different sort of song, different sound, but that would actually work for Hollywood Riot. And that's sort of how the chorus came about. And the song really was sort of about nothing to start with. Hollywood Riot just sounded good to sing as a chorus over and over. And then once we got that, we just sort of wrote a song around it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that one was sort of, it's funny, you write those songs and you demo them, and it's not till you actually get in the studio and sort of hear that back and hear that vibe as to whether that song was any good in the first place, So Hollywood was one of those ones where it really came out much better than we'd actually hoped for at the start. A bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a party sort of starter, a bit of was like the perfect album starter, really.
Yeah. Now, Outlaw number 2 is.
So Outlaw, Tommy wrote that one, and that was just, look, you know, I think any good album, and unfortunately, you know, when we write an album, we're thinking of what's a good sort of body of work of, you know, in a traditional sense of an album, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't listen to albums that way anymore. You know, they'll just sort of skip and listen around, you know, the Spotify generation. But we still think in terms of like what, you know, if you're listening from start to finish, how does it make sense? What key is it in? You know, what's the vibe? Do we sort of, you know, drop it down? We love doing that. So Outlaw is, you know, just that perfect sort of, you know, let's now take it up a notch with song 2.
Yeah. And even though it feels like you've taken it down a notch with Cold Day in Hell, it's really not.
Yeah, so that was probably a little bit different to the first 2. And it's, I mean, it's all about the chorus on that one, really. But yeah, I mean, that's another one I was just sort of mucking around. I'd actually had the chorus of that song, I guess, written a long time before, but nothing else to go with it. So sometimes when you're sort of writing an album, you go back to some of the stuff that you've just got, you know, recorded on your phone, and where can I fit this into? And, you know, that was that one. And then just sort of build a bit of a funny story around it, really. Look, it's sort of, it's probably a lot of, you know, a lot of the stories about kind of the, you know, meeting the devil at the crossroads, that sort of classic story, and sort of putting my own spin on that, you know. Somebody actually has his soul, he sold his soul, and he wants it back, that old story. But actually, you know, walks down and confronts the devil, that sort of thing, and basically trips him up with a piece of guitar string or piece of wire, and gets his soul back and runs away. You know, it's a bit stupid, really, but again, it's just sort of tongue in cheek, trying to be funny.
Yeah. And we come to Stand Back. What's the story behind that?
There's a couple of stories in that. So the first story is about, there's this, we did a tour supporting the Living End, and sorry, not the Living End, it was Grinspoon, years and years and years ago, and we did it at the Leagues clubs in New South Wales. And it was just there was this one guy that was sort of, you know, saying how much he loved Grinspoon and all that, and he was off his head, and he just grab us, like we were just standing there sort of watching, and he'd just grab us and, like, you know, in a headlock, and just really bad breath, and just knocking out drinks every time we wanted to talk to. And it was just, I mean, there's been, you know, everyone's got a person like that at a pub or watching a band or whatever. So it was sort of like a story about, you know, dude, I just want to watch this band, like, stop chewing my ear off and spilling shit all over me. So that was the first story. The second part of that is about an ex-band manager of ours. So and just a few moments where we thought it was pretty funny just to put him into a story. But that's really it. And it was sort of like, you know, the theme of, you know, stand back, like, fuck off, get the fuck out of my face, sort of thing. And again, it was built around that. You know, when I was sort of mucking around with that riff, it just, in my head, it was sort of like, it just stand back just seemed to work. So the song was then built around that as a chorus.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you sort of do things backwards like that.
Well, it's, yeah, definitely, as I said earlier, it's one of my favorites on the album.
Oh, cool. Thanks,
one
Mary.
of my favorites is on First on the Other Side. St Kilda is fucked.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's Tommy Boyce, one of his finest moments. That's so Tommy grew up in St Kilda. So it was really just an observation of, you know, when he was growing up, here's all this cool stuff that was going on down St Kilda, and all the stuff he liked to do, and how different it is now, and, you know, just pulling old things down, things closing down, new apartments going up everywhere, new sort of clientele in sort of old pubs and things like that. So it was really just a,
isn't it?
yeah, it wasn't, I guess, meant to be a disrespect in a sense to St Kilda. It's more of a, you know, what happened to the place? Where is everyone? Where are the freaks? You know? Yeah. So, and just Tommy's just, he is a fantastic lyricist. Some of the lyrics he comes up with are just phenomenally funny. So that was one of his best moments, I reckon.
I love it. Yeah, I think everyone loves it.
Almost didn't make the album, that song.
Really? Why?
Yeah, because when we tracked it, we actually tracked that song. We ended up having to sort of do some edits and, you know, muck around with it for a long time to try and get things right. And then Tommy actually had to redo the guitars on that track outside of our studio session. So he was a bit worried that it wasn't sounding as good as the other stuff. And so it almost, you know, it almost didn't make it to the album. So I'm glad it did. I was a big fan of pushing it and getting it on that album. So I'm glad it made it.
I'm glad you did. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a good song too, just to have something that means something, and it's got a bit of a local flavor to it as well, you know. That really just resonates well with people.
Even though it does have a local flavor, I mean, this album did really well overseas as well, and especially in Brazil, of all places.
Yeah, it's that's been really good for us probably in the last couple of years. We've you know, building up sort of European following, and as you say, now in Brazil. I mean, that's awesome. It's fantastic that that's getting out there, and we had some really good reviews on the album. And I guess the biggest frustration is not being able to get over there and tour over there. We would have been there by now, you know.
Yeah.
But nothing we can do about that. But yeah, it's kind of cool. And for a song like St Kilda, it's sort of like people listening overseas would have no idea some of the references in that song, but it's enjoyed just the same, you know. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they've seen some of their locals turned into a place where cashed up bogans go now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or rednecks.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know what you call them in Europe or Brazil. I don't know what the words are. It'd be the same sort of person. Yeah.
Learn before you get there, and make sure you do it in your intro to the song.
That's a good idea.
Next up is Midlife Crisis. I'm hoping this is tongue-in-cheek, because you guys have achieved a lot.
Yeah, this one's got a little bit more of a darker shade to it, I guess. I think that was one of the first songs Tommy wrote for, you know, that when we're doing demos for that album. And at the time, I think we had the album, you know, we were calling it Midlife Crisis, the album. It was going to have a whole different theme. But, I mean, I think it's just there's a little bit of seriousness in that, you know, we're getting older and what do we got to show for it? But I think it was done in a very sort of tongue-in-cheek way as well, you know. But yeah, it's probably one that sounds a little bit different. I think the sound, that was one of my favorites. I just loved how it sort of got that, you know, that Saints kind of flavor sort of to it in the intro. And yeah, look, that was probably one of the best songs at the start, and then it's you know, we probably wrote some better ones after that. But no, I actually like that song. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, I do enjoy it as well. And I'm with you guys. I sort of grew up same ages as you guys, and I felt, wow, is this me now? What have I done with my life?
Yeah. And you know, there's a couple of ways you can look at that, but yeah, it's probably the least I guess tongue-in-cheek sort of funny, you know, rock song on the album. But that's cool, you know. Again, in the whole sense of listening to something as an album, I think it's, you know, a different flavor again.
Definitely. Red Hot. Now, this is a favourite for a lot of people, a lot of listeners, a lot of your audience when you play this live.
Yeah, Red Hot was that was probably one of my least favourites when we were doing that. And again, it's just, you know, how something sounds in a demo to when it actually is finished can be completely different. But I think it was actually our record company. So Dave Vodicka was a big fan of this and wanted to release it as a single, and we were like, okay, you know, and it just, yeah, it seemed to resonate pretty well. It's got a good beat and good feel to it. It's probably more down I guess the AC/DC-ism sort of sound of the Casanovas. So there's a ton of people that still associate us with that sound. So that, I guess, that sort of worked as well.
It was a good way to lead into the album as a single anyway.
Yeah, I think so. So it worked out well. But, you know, and because it was a single, it was one that we thought, well, let's do it live. And I think it was one of the first that we learned how to play with Wolfie to be able to do it live. So it's one that will just always, I guess, be in our set now for a while.
Are there songs that you do have in your set that you actually are sick of playing or don't like playing? Yeah.
Yeah. And that changes individually as well. We're all sick and tired of playing 10 out of 10. It has to be played live, you know. It's a mix of what we want to do and, you know, what you guys want to hear. So it would be bad to not have that. But yeah, there's others, absolutely. And we try and change things up. Sometimes it's the worst thing in the world is to actually, you know, a rehearsal before a show and we're playing all these old songs and we're just sick of them, you know. When you're just about to record a new album, all you want to do is play the new stuff. But it sort of has that reverse effect with the audience. But
yeah, and then you've got Bulletproof, which is another great one.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
So Bulletproof, I wrote that riff. Tommy came up with the lyrics on that. I was actually trying to write a really good riff that Tommy could really sink his teeth into. I was actually trying to write something that would sound good with Tommy playing it.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, you know, I had that ZZ Top sort of feel about it, that real sort of, you know, dirty, swampy kind of riff. But yeah, it was that just came out a lot better than what we thought. That was one of probably the last ones that we wrote on that album. But again, it was just I think that appealed as just a different flavor again, just to have a real kind of, you know, honky, swampy sort of sound, you know, right near the end of the album. And it created a real sort of contrast to the next song, the title track, Reptilian Overlord, where it was. And then we were just jamming that song. It was like, well, how the hell do we finish this? And that's where we sort of went into the, you know, the double step sort of Motorheady kind of thing at the end of that. And the songs really, I mean, it's ex-girlfriend sort of territory, that one. But yeah, it was just sort of, again, just a thought in our minds. And it was sort of like, you know, how do we write a song around Bulletproof? It was another one of those where it was like that sounded perfect for the chorus line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. And what was it like touring with Motorhead?
It was awesome. We did it a couple of times. The first time we did it, we were on the tour with Motorhead and Motley Crue, playing the arenas.
Yeah.
Oh man, just the actual playing of our shows. I mean, you get to play essentially when the lights are still on and there's people, you know, walking into the venue, and you know, you do the best you can or whatever, but they're certainly not there to see you. The best things about those tours are just the things that you see and hear and all that backstage, you know, like just they had very very polarizing type of cruise. Motorhead was a really sort of, it was almost like they just tour with a small tour party like they have been since the 70s,
Yeah.
Where Motley Crue just had this massive entourage of people. And it was really quite funny just seeing that actually happening, that diversity of two massive bands. But yeah, it was really cool. And we were sort of hanging out with the Motorhead guys probably a lot more, and they'd invite us into their dressing room, and they're just down to earth guys. I always think it's funny, like people think of someone like a Lemmy and they think of how he is on stage and sort of badass, rock and roll guy. It's in his blood. And then you see him, backstage, and he's just sort of sitting there with a towel wrapped around his head, just with his glasses on, just reading a novel, just with a bit of downtime. It's just, people don't see the real side of people, and that's what's sometimes cool when you do those tours.
Lastly, Reptilian Overlord. Tell us about how that came
out. So that was Tommy's creation. So that was really just I don't know. Tommy just sort of had 2 or 3 just epic journey type of songs that he came out with, and there was another one that was really good. It was similar to Reptilian Overlord that didn't make the album, which is a shame. But look, it was just we'd never really done sort of a really kind of epic song that had a lot of changes and bits and pieces, and it's total Sabbath, obviously the song. But it just made sense just to stick it at the end of the album, and it's the whole song sort of a fun take on all of the the David Icke kind of conspiracy theories and reptilian people and all this sort of stuff. So it's really just a lyrical mashup of everything conspiracy theory, and even in the demo, Tommy had the last little bit where David Icke's speaking. So we left that in, and we thought, well, if we're going to do that, it's got to be at the end of the album. So and we're kind of following that trend in our new album as well. So we'll have a finisher, if you like. Reptilian was just, it sort of made for a perfect theme, for the whole album. And that's where we sort of started thinking about the whole, what do we do as a reptilian sort of thing? Is it too controversial? And we just thought, fuck it, we'll just do it anyway. And that's where we found the Diana, the V sort of theme that we ran with.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
I think she's in Australia now.
She is. Yeah, she is. So we've had some people that have messaged us and said that I think she lives in Melbourne.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were going to try and get in contact. We had this sort of, idea that, maybe she can we can contact her and she can be there and announce us for our album launch or something like that. We never did it. We never thought of it, and now it's way too late.
It's not too late because actually now, and as your press release says, better late than never.
That's right.
Yeah, you're releasing the album, and you've got a couple of shows coming up. You've got The Corner, or is that the only one?
Yeah, so the Corner, we've just thought, well, let's do a proper album launch. I mean, we've played a few shows recently, and actually not a few. I think we've played 2 shows, but I think that was at the Corner and Stay Gold, but that's it. We were just wanting sort of any sort of show, but we hadn't really sort of thought, well, let's do a proper album launch, for actual people, not a streamed one. So it's a weird year, and it's a weird way of doing things and launching the album so late, but it'd be cool. We can't wait to actually play at the Corner. It's been a long time since we've played there as well. So hanging to play. We're overwhelmed with enthusiasm.
Oh, can't wait. And it's a lot closer to home too.
Yeah. And we've got I'm not sure if it's 100% confirmed, but Fuck the Fitzroy Doom Scene's going to be playing there as well.
Excellent. Wondering who the support bands were because it hadn't been announced yet.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn yet because I haven't seen a. Actually, I should check. If I check an email here, I think I saw an email. Hang on, you might hear it first live. Oh, we're confirmed. Yeah, so I can say it now. So there we go.
Yeah.
So Fuck the Fitzroy Doom Scene are supporting as well, and they're an awesome band. So that'll be a good night.
What can the audience expect from this launch? And are you going to introduce some of your new songs?
New songs?
New songs, yeah.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about that. So I think we're probably what to expect. I guess we'll be playing all those classic songs that we play in our live show that people want to hear that we might be getting a bit sick of individually, but we'll play them anyway. Obviously, we're going to play, some songs off Reptilian Overlord. But yeah, we've got a couple of new songs that we might play one or two of those.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, that gives us a bit of an idea if they're any good or if they suck or, so. But yeah, so we're excited to do that too. We've got a new life on, wanting to sort of get out there and play because we're writing a new album as well. So, but we can't forget the one we've already released. So it's a little bit of everything, I guess, all mashed into one show. When
you played at Stay Gold, I think I took more photos of the audience than you guys because you had like Airborne there just, rocking out to every one of your songs. How does it feel when you get such support from the music industry, the actual musicians within it?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're I think Ryan and Joel from Airborne, they're a different case because the success I believe that Airborne's got is truly the passion that those brothers have got, and it's real. So it's not just, the passion for their own band. If there's a good rock and roll show on, they'll be there and they love it just the same, So it's a real genuine passion and love for rock and roll those guys have. And, I think whenever they're in town, they always rock up to our shows, which is awesome, because it used to be, we've been, we're not young anymore. Used to be, I remember we'd play shows and we'd see the Airborne boys as, before they did anything, and they're just sort of, in the room, just sort of hanging out or whatever. So, even with all the success they've had, that hasn't changed at all. And they're just down to earth guys, So if they, if they're in town and we're playing, they're always there, always up the front, which is cool. It's unreal.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions left. First one, how would you describe your sound in food form?
Food form. Okay. Probably like a really good curry. All right, and it's how you make the curry too. Like I like to attribute sounds to flavors. So I think a really good curry's got a really good like mid-range to it, where that's got all the spices and that sort of stuff to it, the fragrances. So that's probably a really good way of describing Tommy's really good mid-range rock and roll Les Paul sound through his well, it's not a Marshall anymore, he uses a PV, and then you've got like a good creamy base to it, so it's got a little bit of cream in there, and that's sort of you see where I'm going with this, don't you, Mary?
Yeah, I do.
Good I guess rhythm section as a 3-piece. You got nowhere to hide, so you've got big drums, big bass. And then you got to have at the top like the right amount of like chili and spice and lemon or lime juice, that sort of thing. So I think that's it. I think we try and make the best balance of sounds, much the same as how you'd put a really good curry together.
Fantastic, I love it.
That's insane.
And lastly, our magazine's called What's My Scene? So Damo, what is your scene?
My scene would be it would be music in general. I mean, I just love I think no matter what mood or whatever you're feeling, it's always, if you just, you know, strap on your headphones, there's always something that's going to make you feel good, or, you know, not feel good if you want that. Or, you know, I just think the power of music is just amazing. And my scene is, I guess, enjoying that and being part of that for as long as I can, really. I want to be like a, you know, a Rolling Stone. I want to be like a really old person still rocking out, you know. I want to be a really old, pathetic looking guy that just still thinks he's in his 20s. That's my scene.